Hello class, and we are moving into project 3, which will utilize the knowledge that you have from project 1 and 2 and combine them together so that we can do a multicolor screen print project. So we will be working with both of your hoops, and this is kind of a synopsis of a test one that I did, and you can see that this has both yellow and magenta in the print. And I'm gonna go step by step and show you how to get prints that are reliable like this, utilizing the methods that you've already learned. And just to kind of give you a visual aid, these were the screens that I used for that test. This is what I would have called my key image. And so that's kind of like, it's gonna be the first image that you create. It probably has the most amount of information. And when I created that, I did not know what this was gonna look like. So don't worry about having to plan for your second layer, for your additional color, because you'll do that kind of based off of and reacting to your original image. So the first thing you'll want to do is I'm going to pop off the screen from my first project. So we'll pretend like this is my first project. So to pop that off, you just loosen the screw. Take that out. It might be a little stuck because there might have been some screen filler attached to the wood. So this screen can get popped back in, especially if you have the screen filler all the way to the edges. You can pop that back in and use it again. So don't feel like, don't be concerned about not being able to print anymore. If you want more, you can always just pop that back in. So I would store this somewhere that it can stay nice and flat. And then grab a fresh sheet and restretch. So this is a process that you've already done. So this will be just a visual refresher, but it doesn't take too long to do this, and I'll just fast forward through this part. Okay, so I made a design. So just like with the last project, you're gonna come up with your concept and your sketch, and you're gonna keep it in that same, that same area. So this is maybe getting close to my edges. It'll be fine. I've printed all the way closer to that edge. So if you did 5 by 5, you wanna broach a little bigger, go for it. You can get a little more detail using the gum Arabic stencil process that we're gonna use. And this also leaves me some area that if I did want the other color, again, you don't have to plan for that at this point, but if I did want the other color out here, I have some space up here in my other screen. It's not gonna get too far up. So I went ahead and decided that I wanted these, my Sharpie's giving out on me, but these dark areas are gonna be where my ink is. So this process, you won't have to paint around areas. So small text like that is gonna be a lot easier to do. The reason that I made you do it for the different way the first time is that gum Arabic is kind of a difficult and rather niche material to find. So if you're not like in a printmaking world, it's hard to find, and it also only comes in a gallon usually. So this is kind of a hard material to find. So if you didn't have this, you could use the first method. So there's more than one way to make a screen print for sure. So there's lots of different methods. It's just a different way of making a stencil. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set this up where I can have this offset. You could do the pencil situation again with redrawing this, but I think I'm just gonna offset this just a little bit from my paper because you don't want the gum going all the way through. So I'm gonna get a couple little props. So I don't want to be that high up, like the distance of a piece of masking tape. I'm thinking more along the lines of this half pad of Post-it notes. That will give me a little bit of distance right there. Grab my other one. And then if I notice that it is touching at some point, then I can raise it a little higher if I need to. So you're gonna need your tiny paintbrush, and you will need your gum arabic. So this is a very viscousy liquid, so be careful when you open it, it could go flying out. So the basic principle of this is that gum arabic, it's used in a process called lithography for the most part, but gum arabic is also in a lot of food. It's in a lot of candy. I'm not telling you to eat it. Let's just be 100% clear. But this is a material that is in food products, and it's a preserver most of the time. It also changes the consistency of some foods. It does reject grease, and that's the whole reason we're gonna use it. So there's different ways to do what we're doing. Some people use Elmer's glue, some people use different things that would block a pigment. It is also water soluble. So that means when I paint it on and then I put the screen filler on top of it, I have to do it kind of quickly because screen filler does have water in it. But when I put the screen filler on top of it, this is gonna reject it because the screen filler has some grease in it. So then once the screen filler dries, I can just rinse out the gum arabic. So I'm going to draw with this where I want ink to be. So it's kind of the opposite of what you were drawing last time. So last time you were painting in areas that would block the ink. This time you're painting in the areas that you want ink to be. So let's write that down. Gum arabic equals ink. And with this project, it can be more brushy because you're painting this on. So you can have some wispy little brush marks in there that would show up. So I've got more of a textural quality in a lot of this. So I'm going to go through and just paint through. I'm just gonna, and you can see it's it'll hold onto your paintbrush a little differently than paint does. Hard for it to focus on this, but it's kind of thick. And I'm gonna do my text first probably, so I can start to paint that on. It doesn't have to be thick at all. It just needs to be consistent. So now I don't want to hold it up, totally vertically. I'm just pulling it up a little bit from the table to see what things look like, because I want kind of a brushy quality. That was kind of the point of me putting the brushes in there. So I think I like kind of the detail that's in there. Something I want to do for just a fun little part of my demo, but also just for fun, you can do super tiny detail, like little dots. This is the way that you would do this, because with the other method where you're painting around something, it's like nearly impossible. And I want to use it because I want it to kind of give the appearance of like maybe some dots of paint that are kind of going up into the air. So little tiny dots. This doesn't have to be thick. It can block the screen filler pretty well without being thick. But it will, you know, the thicker it is, the longer it's going to take to dry also. So keep that in mind. But I usually, when I'm doing dots, I'll put a really big dot and then I'll use that dot to grab from to do the rest of them. So this is just for fun, but also to show you the amount of small detail. So if you like doing stippling, this might be a fun way for you to create your stencil. So I want to leave this lifted. I'm going to move this piece of paper because it's a little bit, it's a little wavy. It's almost touching the screen. I want to leave this lifted to dry. So I don't want it touching a surface, otherwise it'll stick to that surface. So some sort of lift, could be 2 books or something, as long as air is getting on both sides. And you need that to dry 100%. So it's gonna feel almost plasticky, kind of like dried Elmer's glue when it's totally dry. And don't use a hairdryer on it. You can towards the end, but it's very liquidy. So if you used a hairdryer on it now, it's just gonna it's gonna move on you. So let it dry to like maybe a tacky kind of surface. And if you accidentally like touch it, trying to test it, and it lifts up, you can just put a little bit more back on top of it. So it needs to be totally dry before our next step. All right, so it's been about 45 minutes. It's probably half an hour, and then maybe it was closer to an hour, half an hour. I waited for it to air dry, and then I used a hair dryer for a little bit, and then I let it air dry a little bit more. And it might still look a little shiny, but if you touch it, it is hard. So that is what you want. You want it to all be hard. And then we're going to put on the screen filler. And your drawing that was put down with gum arabic is going to resist the screen filler. And you want to move kind of quickly, because if you go over it too many times, it would start to activate the gum arabic, and then you're going to get screen filler in spots that you don't want it. You also only want to do this from the front. If you do it from the backside, that gum arabic hasn't bonded with the backside, so then the screen filler is just going to fill in areas that you don't want it to. So what you want for this is you want your screen filler container, which I have opened and closed so many times that it is now difficult to get open, because that screen filler has started to dry on the edges, and I'm getting it slowly. So give it a little mix. You're also going to use your your larger brush, and you're going to use your squeegee. And we're essentially going to be putting some screen filler here, taking the squeegee, bringing it this way, some screen filler here, bringing it this way with the squeegee. We're gonna make it a nice flat, even surface. And then we're gonna let it dry. And then we have a few more steps. This project is a lot of do a step and wait, do a step and wait. So I'm gonna be ready with my squeegee. Place some there, and like place a little more than you think you need. Do a couple little dabs. Get good pressure and pull. Do it as far as you can, but don't scrub. And pull, and you can see that it is rejecting the screen filler. And you don't want to do this and then walk away and come back and do it again, because it's gonna make that gum arabic start to move. Okay. I think I've gotten most of my areas that have gum arabic, but I'm gonna do one more this direction. All right, then I want all the rest of this to be filled in. So I'm going to put it close to the edge, use my squeegee to kind of make a nice even coat as close to the edge as I can. We want it all to be as even as possible, but then we will use the paintbrush in the very corners to make sure that we are filled in there so that we don't get ink seeping out. So I'm gonna finish that off. Okay, and then we let it dry again. If you see screen filler coming back on the back side like this, it's a little thick, you can thin it down, but you do not want to go over your image here. So as long as it's on the outside, we can start to thin it out with either the squeegee or with the brush, but don't go over it, over your image that way. And then we want to prop it up so that it can dry. So I'm using these two pieces, these two rolls of tape again, and prop it up so it can dry evenly. You need it to be 100% dried for the next step. So the next step will be I'm gonna use a bathtub. You can use a tray or a Tupperware, you can use your sink, wherever you can stop up water to have at least like 2 inches of water, because we're gonna soak it and then gently wash away the gum arabic. So we're gonna wait for that to dry, and again, let it dry for a little while, and then you can use the hair dryer, do it on both sides, and then be sure to wash out your squeegee and your brush before you do too much more, because your screen filler will dry on there. So now we wait. All right, so we've waited, and I've used some hair dryer time to make it so the screen filler is dry. And I'm double checking these like shiny spots. And I was using the hair dryer, you know, a little bit on the front and then a little bit on the back, and then flip it back and forth because these thick areas need to get heat on both sides. It's a little shiny still, so I'm a little worried that it might rinse out, but I can always patch it. So I can patch it with some tape, or I can patch it with a little more screen filler, either way. But I think we should do the magical washout part. Okay, so we're in my bathtub again, and I'm gonna fill up the bathtub to just have like an inch or two of warm or lukewarm water, and I'm gonna have a couple of Q-tips ready. So get the backside wet, and then also let some of that water drip onto the top part of the image, and then we're gonna let it soak a little bit, and you'll start to see some of this lift up. You'll start to see some little red flakes. That's the areas of the screen filler that were being resisted, and I could start to use my Q-tip to rub on the surface, and it's gonna allow those areas where the gum arabic was blocking the screen filler, it's gonna allow those to come up. And you wanna be gentle first. If there's some areas that are being a little stubborn, you can put a little more attention in those spots. But it's pretty magical. It's kind of like those, I don't know if they make those anymore, those magic erasers or magic markers where you draw for a while and then you go over it with a different marker and it becomes a different color. It's kind of that kind of unraveling or revealing of something. Okay, I'm gonna give it a rinse. I need to get rid of those little bits. And then I'm going to look at it a little closer, do a little more, not really scrubbing, I'm just giving it a little more attention. And that's why you want to use a Q-tip, because you can't scrub super hard. I'm just getting the edges off. And then these little dots, so some of them might have been a little too light, or when I was putting the screen filler on, it kind of got underneath it. I was going in multiple directions. But it's a pretty organic area, so I'm not upset about it. My W is a little funny, but I hope it still can read as now instead of no. There we go. So you can see you get a lot more crispness and a lot more detail with this process, but like I said, if you don't have those resist materials, then it's kind of hard to achieve the same kind of effect. And I still like this kind of painterly effect that happened. I did that intentionally and let the gum kind of be loose. So now I need to let this dry before I can proof it. And I'm going to clean out the tub. You know, be nice to your family or whoever you live with. Rinse that out and let this dry, and then we'll proof it. All right, we're on to our next step, which is taking a proof of this layer. So what I want to do first is check in the light to see if there's any like holes anywhere, if anything accidentally got washed out, and I don't see anything. I checked it a little bit earlier. So I think it's good to go. So I'm going to proof it. So this is just a regular piece of paper that's the same size as yours, is 11 by 14. And I'm just gonna make one print. It doesn't really matter what color you do it in. I can just use magenta straight from the package. I'm gonna grab a popsicle stick. So you need your ink, popsicle stick, and your squeegee, and you're just making one print. And then this print, once it's dry, we'll use that to decide where the other colors are. So again, you can print it in the color that you want to print it in at the end, or you can just print it in any random color. I would not proof in yellow or in if your random color that's in your package is transparent. So it needs to be dark enough that you can see what's going on in your image. I have an extra piece of paper to the other side of me in case this print turns out not great. So we'll just see how it goes. And then after I'm done printing, then I will clean it in the tub like I did with the other ones. So you don't have to use that if you have one of the hoses. You can just rinse it off in the sink and use a sponge if you're ever worried about anything flaking off or you have anything delicate. So you can just rinse it out gently like I did the last time. So again, I'm holding this down real tight. I'm gonna try to make as few swipes as I can. That's probably good. There we go. So I got a little thick right there because I had my swipe right there. The next time I print, I'll probably go like this. And while I'm here, while I'm, you know, got an inky screen, I might as well do that. So I'm gonna place it that way. Do less strips. Yeah, that looks better. Okay. So now I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm gonna have either colored pencils or markers or something that will help me decide where other colors can go in relationship to this color. And you gotta remember that part of the assignment is that you have two colors that are going to blend together on the page to make a third color. So if I use just straight up cyan and straight up magenta, that's going to make a purple where they lay on top of each other, but I can also increase the transparency in the colors to make them blend even more. So now I'm going to rinse this out in the sink or in my tub and then wait for this print to dry, and then we'll start to plan the next color. All right, so my print is dry, and I'm gonna try to plan out what I would like to do with the other layer. So I've got a blue marker that's kind of transparent, and it's maybe not the same color I would wanna do this with, but I think what I'd like to do is maybe have the color, maybe make it look like the paint, like this big swatch here is the color. So I want, everybody needs to have an area where you have just your secondary color independent. So I'll be able to see blue, I'll be able to see the magenta, and I'll be able to see the purple where they blend. So again, these are not the exact colors. I think for my final print, I might do my magenta, but make it more transparent. And then I might make the blue more like of a teal color. Like it might be very similar to the random color that I have in my package. I could make the handle blue, or I could do something like make it polka dotted or striped or something like that. So if I was gonna do the polka dots, I'd probably wanna do this layer with the gum arabic instead of, you have the choice. You can do this layer with the gum arabic method, or you could do it with your previous method. And make this one look like it's got paint on it. Then I could have some areas in here that make it look like little strips of paint. So then I've got, this is the minimum of what you need. You need your blue, you need your color 1 is layer 1. Color 2 is layer 2. And then color 3 is where layer 1 and 2 are on top of each other. So it's easy to kind of, envision what you're doing with this kind of prep. So if you have like a marker that's transparent like this, or a highlighter, even if it's not the color necessarily that you want to use, they're transparent, so they'll make it so that you can see what you're doing. I might also do something like add a little shadow or something. I don't know, making some stuff up. Something like that. So when I do my next layer, which is going to be another screen, that's why you have 2 hoops, there in that layer, the only thing I'm going to block off with my gum arabic are the things that are blue or purple. So everywhere that I put blue down, I make that mark with gum arabic. So I'm going to stretch my other hoop and then get that one ready with the gum arabic. Okay, so you know how to stretch a screen by now. So if you need a refresher, it is earlier in this video. I'm setting it up the same way, where I've got these 2 little post-it note lifters. So I'm going to use the gum arabic method. Again, I think this is, for me, it makes the most sense. Instead of going, wait, what do I go around? You've already done the gum arabic method. So I'm going to block out, or I'm going to basically trace with the gum arabic all of the areas that are blue or will have blue there. So everything that I just drew with the blue marker, I will go over it with the gum arabic. Okay, and that is it. It's always, usually, I won't say always, the second layer is less information. So that's why we call the first one the key. So it has the most visual information, even if you don't have text in your image. So it's smaller, but I'm gonna do the exact same process. So I'm gonna wait for this to dry, and then I'm gonna coat on the screen filler and then wash it out, and then we will start printing once that is dry. So I'll kind of fast forward through the next steps without any volume because it'll just be the same thing as the last screen. Before starting to print, we are going to do our colors. So I want to mix a magenta that is going to be a little more transparent than what I have in here. So you could use Q-tips for this. I'm just going to use my finger to just get a little bit of the ink. So I like this magenta, but I want it to be a little more transparent. So I want to stretch out that magenta maybe to make it a little lighter. So to start with that, I'm gonna grab my empty container that's in my kit and my transparent base. And I might mix maybe, go back to your color mixing project and think about like how much you want to dilute something based off of how the transparent base does that. So I might mix 25% transparent base and 75% that roughly. So if I start with that much transparent base, I need to mix in, 2 or 3 times more of the magenta. And I can mix what I have here and then add more magenta if I need to. So this is a good use of the stir sticks. And you want to always start with your lightest color. So if you know you want something to be kind of transparent, but you want to start with transparent base. But if you know you want it to be more magenta and less transparent and just a touch difference, then you'd start with the magenta. So this is my lighter version. So it's not quite as intense. It'll allow other colors to go on top of it. So I'm gonna use a hairdryer really quick and get that to dry so that whenever I mix my kind of turquoisey blue color, I can swipe it on top of it and see what they look like on top of each other. All right, so my magenta is, it is dry. And I'm going to adjust this turquoise that was my random color that was in the kit. So I'm gonna test it first before I adjust anything. So it's pretty transparent. I think I wanna add some blue to it. I wanna make it maybe a little more impactful. So this color on top of that, that makes like a pretty cool color. I kind of want that color when mixed in to be a little more purplish. So I'm just gonna grab a dab of the blue because this color is already pretty transparent. So any pigment is going to have a bigger impact than you would think. So when you're grabbing ink, you don't wanna take this dirty green popsicle stick and stick it directly in there. Try to either use something clean or like I did the first time, I was pouring the pigments into the cup. If you run out of cups, it's technically okay to use like a drinking cup. I try not to use my drinking cups just because I'm kind of paranoid about what's in pigments, even if I washed it afterwards. If you have like a used jar, or even if it's like a used small Coke bottle or something, you could cut the top of it off and it's a nice little mixing container. Let's test this out before I go too far. So it's definitely gotten a lot more pigmented. So it doesn't look that different in the container, does it? But it definitely got a lot bluer, a lot darker. And I like the color that's mixing when things go on top of each other. So now I'm ready, and having those, you know, I've got my three colors, so independently I have the turquoise and the magenta, and in between it's this like funky kind of purple color. So this is gonna be my color palette. So now I can put all the other inks away but keep the ones that I'm going to use. I'm probably gonna print, you can print either color first. It really depends on how you want things to layer, but I know that my turquoise is really, really transparent, and that red, the magenta, is a little stronger, so I'm probably gonna print my magenta, my key layer first. That isn't always what you'll do, so I'll talk you through which layer needs to get printed first for the final product. If you have a color that's opaque, has white in it, you might not want to put that on top of your key, because it might look milky on top of your darker color. So it really just depends on the final outcome that you want. So we'll do that on an individual basis. But for now, I'm gonna get ready to print my key color first. So I'm gonna get all my paper together and start to mark them for the appropriate placement. So before we start doing our printing, so I'm gonna print my key layer. I want to make sure that my image can get roughly in the same position on each sheet. So the first step is I'm going to take masking tape and I'm going to place that on the hoop on two areas that are directly across from each other. You don't have to measure this straight across. And then with my black Sharpie, I'm gonna make a little mark that is going perpendicular to the line of the hoop. Same thing over here. Then I need to have a pencil, and it's preferable to have something like an HB or a 2H, and if you just have like a number 2 pencil, that's okay. You won't want to push hard because this is going to get erased afterwards. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place it, and if you want to measure from like edge of the paper to the hoop, you can do that. And I'm noticing that, you know, for this one, it's not going to be the same for everyone's, that the top screw of my hoop is at the very top of my page. So I'm just kind of noticing that, but whenever I want it to be straight on the page, it's a little off to the side. So I'm going to mark where, I'm gonna gently lift this up and try not to let the hoop move. Just put a mark, you know, you'll start at the base of where your Sharpie marker mark is, and then go out horizontally from there. and then not moving it, I'm going to use the marker bit over here and make a mark going out from there. So these tiny little marks, you will erase them in the end. They are very, very small, very faint. That's what you want. They're enough that you can see them when you need them, but you can erase them easily. So when I'm printing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the right side up, place this in accordance to that Sharpie mark, and then keep holding this up a little bit and then slowly start to bring this down to the mark that it's at. And when there's ink in here, you don't want to be shifting it around like this on the surface of the page. You want to slowly lower it down so it's in line, keep it in place, and then squeegee your image. So I'm going to do that for every sheet, and you're not printing a huge edition, so it doesn't take long. So I have my first marks for color 1. So my inks are mixed, my screen is ready, and my paper is ready. So I'm going to set my paper off to the side. And just remember that registration, so its basic principle is that it's helping you get the image on the paper in the same way, the same manner every time, and that the colors are going to match up the way that they're supposed to. In every process of printmaking, registration looks a little different. And also even within screen printing, depending on your processes and your intention, registration could look a little different. Using creative problem solving skills, that's how I figured out this form of registration, is really important depending on what your final outcome is going to be. If you were using full screens that you could buy from that are a Speedball brand, or the ones that I have in the classroom, we would have hinge clamps. So that would be a different kind of registration. But this is the basic principles of what we're going to use for this one. So now I'm ready to print. I have my paper, I have my squeegee, I have my, I like to have both of the inks at the ready, but I have my magenta, which is going to be the first color that I print here. So I'm all set to go, and having some sort of rag or something for cleaning out. So I'm going to be printing this first layer, and then I'm going to let that totally dry. If you need to use a hair dryer, please do. And then we will set up for the next color. So I've got my sheets ready to go. I'm going to just prop this up a tiny bit while I pour the ink in. Then for registering, I'm gonna line up on my left side, line up on my right side, hold it steady. And I said last time that it was easier, like better success to come from this angle, so I'm gonna keep doing that. And then you lift up swiftly, per usual. And again, you wanna move pretty quickly through this because your ink could dry in your screen. So next sheet, and being careful not to get ink on my page, so left side, and then lining it up with my right side. Okay, so I have all 4 printed, so you need an addition of 3. So again, things can happen, so make sure you have at least 4 sheets. I usually start with like 5 or 6. And you have plenty of paper that is the exact same size that you need that's already in your pad. So now I want to let these dry, and I'm going to rinse out my screen. As we are waiting for the last couple minutes for the ink to dry, I want to erase these lines because we're going to be doing a similar thing with the other color. So we will need to be able to make those marks on the sheets again, but for the other color placement. So I'm going to go through and do all of these. So to set up for our last color, I want to do the same thing where I'm making masking tape marks. So 2 little pieces, again, they don't have to be perfectly straight across from each other. They are just to hold a mark. And my hoop screws over here, so we'll put this one right here and there. And then put that Sharpie marker mark perpendicular to the frame of the hoop. And then you'll be able to see even through some of the screen filler a little bit. So you're looking to get this lined up the way that it should be. So I know that I want like this part down here to be at the very bottom of my paintbrush. And I want this edge to meet up with the line of my paintbrush. There we go. And I want some overlap in these areas. So this is my arrangement. So I wanted some overlap where that green is going to interfere with that magenta a little. So making sure it's as solid as I can, I make my marks that go straight out from my Sharpie mark. And then I will have my turquoise ink and my squeegee ready. And you can, but what I need you to do first, so I skipped ahead a little, you'll need to make these marks on every sheet. So it takes a couple minutes because you're just trying to get them as lined up as possible on each one. And there will be perhaps a little bit of variation here to there, but you're getting it as similar as possible. Two. All right, so all of my sheets have been marked for the second layer. So I can start by putting a little bit of the green ink just at the very top of my screen. Turquoise, whatever color you want to call it. And just like the other one, I think to prevent those double lines where the ink goes over itself, I'm gonna reposition most of this ink to be down here. And double checking for any pinholes. I don't see anything very egregious. So just like last time, I'm gonna line up my left side and then line up that to my right side. Then pull my color. And then we get that magical moment of the first time you see the colors layered together. Ta-da! So I think my top piece kind of ended up down a little bit, so I'm gonna keep moving, but I really like the color that got layered on top. Like that funky, it's a really funky purple. The color palette feels very 1990s to me. Pick up everything, maybe not down here. Yeah. And they'll look a little bit different when they're dry. I kind of like the moments when there's a little bit of like this paintbrush didn't quite get all of the job done. Okay, got 2 more left. I kind of like the moment. See, if this white wasn't here, if that white wasn't there, then it would make this kind of, I don't know, it would just almost get too dark and you wouldn't be able to see anything. And I think I could have honestly been happy with the image with the original teal. Like this teal is getting a little bit dark, but not in a significant way. It's not becoming so dark that I can't see what's happening. You can still read the text, but it could have been fun to do it with the lighter teal, and I can do it again. So like this kind of moment, which I feel like shows up maybe a little bit better in this one, has this really cool like brushy texture to it, and those polka dots have a really nice crispness to them. Like this gum arabic stencil method really does give you a more brushy appearance than just drawing around it, because you can kind of allow yourself to be more expressive with your marks. So I'm gonna let those dry a few minutes and then we'll talk about additioning. Okay, so our prints are dry, my prints are dry, so it would be time to addition them. So I got pretty good accuracy, I think, even especially considering that we're using like at-home DIY methods. So please remember to erase your little registration marks over here. And when we addition them, you know, I have one that I think I will definitely be leaving out. So I have little moments like this where maybe the ink was a little bit light, like it didn't get pushed through all the way, or maybe there were some slight blockages in my screen that just prevented it from going through the first time. So I'd probably make this one my TP, trial proof or artist proof. And then this one, and also there's a moment like down here where some of those dots didn't get pushed through. Actually, I think I would leave this one out. I'm thinking through this as I talk to you. This one is the one that doesn't have all the dots. So I would make this one my AP or TP and this one in the addition. So I have 3, so I would do just like I did with the first project, where I label this one 1 out of 3. That would be 2 out of 3 and 3 out of 3. I would put my signature over here, and then my title over here, and if I want the date, I can put the date. Then I would do the same for this one, so this would be 2 out of 3. And then for your submission, have one image that's very close up. Try to get good lighting and really even documentation of that, and then a picture of all 3 of them. So that way I can see the accuracy of all of them. And that is it. So each of you is going to have a different approach to this. So depending on your colors and depending on how your layers look, you might print your secondary layer first, but we will be going over that kind of as you develop your key image and then determine what your second image is. We'll work through what's going to get printed first. So now your first step is just to think of what you want your image to be, and then we'll get into brainstorming.